Welcome to Inform TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota. Today we're going to take a look at a number of issues, but in particular we're going to take a look here at Inform TV on the items relate to the two amendments that are on the ballot, and we'll even talk about a third one I believe should be on the ballot. But we're going to explore what's being said on a national basis about voter ID and how Minnesota comes into the discussion. And what I find, obviously I've told you before, I'm not a journalist, yet I understand some of the challenges of journalism. I'm trying to bring back the old press, that I press the issues, that I research the issues, that I've experienced the issues, and that people of substance get back into being part of our government as well as reporting on what's going on. And I report from a standpoint of an observationist as well as an analyst and a person of substance who have been involved for a lifetime in issues of the day and how the system really works. And that's why I want you, my audience, to listen to Inform TV and pass it on to your friends and your elected officials. Now, one of the topics that, the main topic we're going to cover today relates to the voter ID amendment that's on. And we heard the spin of the local media, the local journalists, the celebrity English majors I call them. And it's always kind of implied it's a racial issue and that type of thing. And as the host of and owner of Inform TV, trying to see that my audience is really informed whether you're an independent, Democrat, or Republican. I could care less. I want good people to step forward and lead and make their government accountable, make their businesses accountable, and see that all Americans, all Minnesotans have a fair shake. And I don't think that's going on right now, and I think a fair amount of you people will believe me and agree with me on that. Now, today I'm going to let you listen to, and I think it's working out. I may sound a little tinny because I don't have my mic on. I've got it laying on my computer, so you can hear this piece from C-SPAN. And for the people at YouTube, if they're looking at this, or Charter, I'm following the guidelines set down in policy by C-SPAN. I'm not advertising yet. I'm hoping my audience will help me find some ads, and as I transition from community TV into commercial TV where I get paid for my time. And so I have the right to share with Minnesotans, my audience, the people that need to hear what's happening on a national basis and how Minnesota is referenced. And when I look at this situation as an observer, I find a program on C-SPAN, and I'm giving them all the credentials they've asked for in their policy for me to use this. And it's important because every Minnesotan should listen to this. Now, the conference is a black policy conference, and they're talking about how they get away from the black box. In other words, people of color or of various races that are only allowed in the debate when they need the black box in there. They need a point of view of a black person. And yet, I would like to do a real analysis on programming, but I would have to pay, obviously, C-SPAN as I get along in it. I may do that. But I want you to look at and listen to what I believe, and I think you'll agree with me, two people of substance, two men of extreme substance and understanding and experience in the world affairs and country affairs and political affairs and business affairs that happen to be black. And they're saying some incredible things that all of us Minnesotans, whether you're Republican, Democrat, black or white, should listen to these people. And yet I want you to listen to the lady's view as well. That just makes me scratch my head, as should you, I think. And yet she makes a good point as well. And I will jump a little bit, not to censor anybody's view, but try to stay on the subject of what people of substance are saying that happen to be black, relating to voter registration and the issues of voting. I think you'll find it interesting. I think I'm in the right spot, and this is from, I believe, Harvard University, from C-SPAN, Race in the 2012 Presidential Campaign. But and a great piece, but I think it needs some commentary and some analysis so everybody understands what's really being said here. But listen to this.
Yeah, let me, shock you by saying something about voter ID. Voter ID, voter photo ID, frankly, doesn't bother me, and I know that opinion may separate me from some of you in this room, but let me try to quickly say why. Whenever I hear somebody say that an ID requirement is oppressive, I have to step back from that and ask the question, how many times are we asked to present ID in the course of our citizenship? The Department of Justice is in court right now challenging 3 voter ID laws as violative of the Voting Rights Act. You can't get in the Department of Justice without a photo ID. It so happens that you can't get in a lot of private buildings in Washington and New York without an ID. It so happens that if you show up and try to get on a plane without an ID, they got to make a whole bunch of phone calls, and if you happen to be an Arab person and show up without an ID. I haven't seen any of those factors evoke a great deal of outrage in our society. Now, whenever I say that, people come back and say, well, Mr. Davis, the difference is that we have a right to vote, we don't have a right to get on a plane, we don't have a right to enter a building. The first thing I say is, when somebody tells you not to enter a building or get on a plane, tell me how you feel. But putting that aside, and all of a sudden you may discover you think you do have some rights, so putting that aside, there's this interesting notion that if you have a right in this country, that nobody can attach a burden to it. Because that's really at the heart of what people say when they're attacking voter ID. They're saying, because I have a right, you can't put a burden on this. You can't make me have to do something extra. And I feel you on that. But here's the problem. When you turn 18 in this country, you don't become auto-enrolled to vote. And by the way, I don't see anybody in the political spectrum saying you ought to be auto-enrolled to vote when you turn 18. We have something called registration. Registration don't happen, if I can be colloquial, by snapping your fingers and saying I'm registered. You have to fill a form out. If you choose to vote absentee, you often have to stand in line. You have to get somebody to notarize your form. Do you have a right to vote absentee? You bet you do in every state. But you have to jump through some hoops to do it. So my only point is, if you're concerned that if you're a political person in this room, if you register people to vote and you're active politically and you're worried about voter ID, as this young lady seems to be, that's okay. Here's how you handle that worry. Get out and make sure the folks you want to vote have an ID. The same way, if you worry about people registering to vote, you get out and register them to vote.
All right. I have a feeling other folks want to follow up on this. I'm going to go to the next question. We can circle back to this if we'd like.
Hello, my name is Flash Wiley. I'm an alumni in the public policy program in '74. You know, it's interesting that black people talk so much about having our points of view aired and heard and discussed and everything, and what we don't do, and I'd like the panel's thought on this, is to make our thoughts heard effectively, which is we do a lot of talking, but when it comes to voting day, we're supposed to show up, and whether it's rain, snow, sleet, or hail, we are there registering our opinions as we were given the right to do, and our forefathers, many of them bled for that to happen. We're not there. So what is it about us that keeps us talking and raising the good fight philosophically, but we don't take care of business when it comes time to take care of business.
Kelly?
Well, what I would say is that, you know, people have to feel that that vote is connected to their lives. And, you know, when they do, they get out and vote. As you said, when that turnout happened last time for Barack Obama, for that election, because people felt that that was somehow connected to their lives. I am fond of saying that Pookie got off the couch that time and voted. Y'all know who Pookie is.
I met Pookie at the inauguration.
He was at the inauguration. And Pookie never gets up to do nothing because, but Pookie felt connected in that moment. Now, to your point about the unemployment, Farai, I don't know that Pookie feels connected this year. You know, so for Pookie and for many other people like him, the question is, will it make a difference if I get up? I don't see that it makes a difference because Pookie is not those of us who are able to go to the federal building and get on the plane and do whatever. He's part of the 25% of African Americans without any government-issued ID. That's versus white people without the same lack of documentation. 70% of the electoral votes right now are held in states with photo ID laws. Now, however you look at that, that's a political situation. That's a let's get busy and tell people why they need to get an ID. Whatever it is, that's the reality at this moment. And some laws are still yet to be enacted. And this is against a context, I have to just answer this about this photo ID thing, when there has not been demonstrated fraud. I'm okay with it if you can demonstrate to me there's some fraud. That everybody who shows up, or every third person, or every second person who shows up is fraudulent. All right, let's make sure, you know, take them through all the hoops, but that is not the case. So something else is going on here. Somehow that story that seems up here has to be connected with the folk who are not voting to make them understand that, you know, there is a lot at stake in this election and in every election, actually. And you know what? In more elections than most, this one coming up, if we presume the nominee, is going to provide for Americans an extremely stark contrast. This is a policy conference about policy and about how policy should be directed. And people need to be paying attention to that.
We have two questioners up here. I'm going to start on the right.
Hi, my name is Luciana Milano. I'm a sophomore at the college, and kind of as a follow-up, but I want to preface it by saying I think that race plays a different role in the Democratic and the Republican parties, and maybe you guys can address that in your question. You may or may not may disagree with me, but I wanted to, and this might be slightly controversial, but I wanted to ask, to what extent do you believe that race is often used as an instrument in politics?
Well, I'm going to go to...
I actually think, you know, when we talk about the voter ID and the voter suppression comment, that I think that it's being used as a wedge issue against Republicans, that somehow Republicans want to suppress the votes of people of color, and that Republicans, you know, are putting together this new Jim Crow era poll tax, and I think it's absolute nonsense. I think that, as we've heard, you can't exist in the 21st century in America without an ID. You can't go in many...
Oh, you can.
Oh,
I'm a field reporter who goes out to those towns where there is nothing but the corner store at the intersection of Tree and Rock.
I agree with that, but I'm only looking at my own example. I'm looking at my relatives who are from rural Valdosta, Georgia, which is an extraordinarily out-of-the-way spot. Miraculously, my 98-year-old grandmother has a voter ID. And this notion, and I think it's absolute nonsense, that Republicans are seeking to divide the country on race and seeking to suppress minority votes to win an election is nonsense. Going to your point, Callie, of, oh, there's no demonstrable proof, or this is some sort of Republican witch hunt. No.
Fraud.
That's where I'm going to.
Yeah.
You look at the election in Minnesota. The Congressman Norm Coleman, who had that seat, it is proven that there are more folks who were illegally registered to vote, who voted and cast a vote in that election, who cost him his Senate seat to Al Franken. So I need to go no further, and in Minnesota, let me say, is not exactly a place where you're saying you're trying to suppress the minority vote. So there's one instance where I think that it's demonstrably false. That to say that it never happens in an instance where I think that the Democratic Party is trying to energy up energy in the base to get folks to vote, and to say Republicans are racist.
Can I quickly jump in?
Wait, Callie had her hand up, and then I'll
Let me be clear. I didn't say it never happened. I said in order for us to be making this kind, it seems to me, this kind of intense move, there ought to be 1 out of every 2 people are fraudulent voters. There's no evidence
Callie,
of that. There isn't. And the other thing that I need to say about that, it's when everybody leading the voter ID, campaign is Republican. Well, people look at the Republicans and say, well, what you doing? And why? The only state where I know that there were black people as a part of the discussion, really, a lot of black folk, was Rhode Island. Rhode Island has a voter ID law, and there were black lawmakers who feel extremely strongly about it. So that's the only state I know about, but the rest, and by the way, those are Democrats. That's the reason I raised it too. Those are black Democrats involved in supporting the voter ID law that is now in place in Rhode Island. But every place else, I don't know any place else. So you got to draw some conclusion.
Let me jump in for 1 second. 15 seconds on this point. The guy who served in Congress before I did, in Lowndes County, Alabama, in the Democratic primary in 1992, he got 130 votes. In the runoff, he got 13,000 votes. You do the math. Let me speak to this young lady's question up here. Your question was about race and how it plays out in both parties. I won't do a song and dance on this, but I'll give you one example. In a governor's race in Louisiana in 2003, there was a minority running. He was not a black person, but he was an Indian brother. And he looked like an Indian guy. About 5 days before the election, his opponent circulated a flyer that showed him with long hair. They darkened the photo to make a dark man look even darker. And the only place they decided that they want to hand out that photo happened to be in the George Wallace territories in Louisiana. And you could do it like clockwork. Every county George Wallace carried when he ran for president in the state of Louisiana is where they handed out these flyers. The Indian guy was named Bobby Jindal, and he lost the election, came back and won the second time, which often happens in politics, but he lost that time. He had a 5-point lead with a week ago until they frankly went heavy race on him. For those who want the rest of the facts filled in, the they was the Louisiana Democratic Party. And Jindal is a Republican. So all I would say to you is, I'm not going to sit here and then say anything to you other than this. There are folks in both political parties who use race when they feel like it as a political instrument. There are Democrats who are as happy to use it as Republicans. And yes, there are some Republicans who have a sad history of doing it too. There was a man named Jesse Helms.
All right,
but let's not think it's just a partisan thing.
Okay. Please go.
With that, I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I encourage you to go there. The whole piece, I think, needs some analysis. One person watches it, but we want to thank C-SPAN for recording this, and Harvard University for having the conference, so we can, as Minnesotans, get a glimpse into some of the things that are being said. I think we all in the state of Minnesota should be in favor of that, whether Republicans, Independents, or Democrats, that we want to make sure the integrity of our elections are as closely monitored as possible. And if you look at the history of elections, not just in Minnesota, but around the country, there is a lot of variance in how we're counting ballots and what is accepted and what is not. And I think this is a great move forward, as these two men were arguing about, and it just bewildered me, this lady of saying, well, if it's 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3, we should do something about it. People, the majority rules in a democracy, even if it rules by 10 votes or 100 votes. The majority rules, and what does that do? It sees to that people of substance get out to vote, that sees that their fellow citizens, that are knowledgeable on the issues get out the vote to see that we have a government representing all of us. And I hope you'll pass this program on to your elected officials and your fellow citizens, because this presentation does an incredible job of giving us some real grasp on what we should think about in making democracy work for all of us. And that's what Inform TV is all about. Yet at the same time, Inform TV this week was looking at state and county government that I think we all need to think about as well. In fact, I encourage you, especially the cities like Red Wing and Wilmer and Alexandria and Duluth that have a Forum newspaper. I believe the Echo Press, a Forum paper here from Alexandria, was there when I came in for my own little press conference, or the input from the public in the press, so to speak. And I questioned the county commissioners about what was going on in labor negotiations, and it's a statewide issue, especially what's going on in Wisconsin. I salute Governor Wilson, and I think all people should be, when you really look at the incredible disparity in wages we have now. Being a public, if you're a common employee, a professional employee, to a level 1 or even a service personnel, it's incredibly how good a job it is to work for a city, a county, or the state. In fact, I encourage anybody out there that has been educated and has talents, whenever a public job comes available in your community, you should be applying for it, because that's the best pay and the best benefits today. And I want you to listen to a little bit, and I hope Forum Communications covers this story. We'll see if the Echo Press does, and some of the other Forum Communications papers covered as well, because I question things relating to the power of 6 License Bureau people in Douglas County that now have a new union. And I was questioning at the little bit of discussion we have in the county commissioner and our county administrator here about, we had 6 people, 5 commissioners and a county administrator, and as they went into closed session after the monthly commissioner meeting, they were going to meet with a representative that represented 6 people, even though the vast majority of Douglas County employees had settled a 2-year contract. And how the labor movement is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger, and how that the county administrator and the county commissioners told me, so it's the same in your county, in Duluth there, and Rochester, or Mankato, or St. Cloud, or Wilmer, where they cannot ask, when lines grew out in the hall in the License Bureau, to have somebody from another department go there and take care of the surge or take care of what goes on in March. And then the tape that they recorded here in Douglas County, when I got that, I had to pay $4.40. I had to go to Menards to exchange something with my third world income so I could buy the tape in time. And then I had to pay another $25 to an old radio jack to bring out the sound of the public employees here in Douglas County. And we'll just take a quick listen to and see what I've got here. But I think any of it and all of it is interesting.
For example, my own personal case, my old Ford pickup, a reliable 255,000 trouble-free miles. I tried to get tabs in March. I actually went there 5 different times as I walked from my studio and the Valtis building here in town to get mail. And there was always a long line out in the hall. And I was wondering, as well as some of the people that stood in line with me, has there been a slowdown in work progress with the License Bureau people to influence this? Because there's been, I don't know if you guys are aware, but there's been, I guess, each time I was there, at least a dozen people in 5 different occasions, and I finally decided, well, I guess I'm going to have to bite the bullet and stand in line. And which brings up, Bill, does county government around the state, as well as here in Douglas County, are you prevented to do what the post office does, the bank tellers do? When there's a lineup, can't you pull staff from another department to clean up the issue? Why do we have lines?
I guess I can't answer the question, why do we have lines, but can we pull people from other departments to work in that? No. Yeah.
And is that because of state law or because negotiating process is strictly in Douglas County?
Those are state rules.
So we have people that are supposed to be public servants, but they have the power to deny county governments in the state of Minnesota to have what is common in every industry in this state. When there's a backlog, we as county taxpayers can't ask our administrator, in this case in Douglas County, to bring somebody from another department, say at the noon hour when there's a big rush or something like that. You cannot do it, what you're telling us?
See, now you're kind of spinning.
No, I'm not. I'm saying what actual citizens are facing and what business is doing. Now, I've looked also at county pay scales, which appear to be about double what are the average county worker here. When you divide the total hours by total wages, there's about 25.50 if I remember right. Now, I also will yield a little bit to the License Bureau people. Obviously, they have great responsibility there. They have to work on a county level as well as state level, and they're actually underpaid compared to similar people in county government. So I guess I can see where they have their beef, and I'm certainly not opposed to people getting good wages. But the issues are the issues, and so that's part of the reason I want to start broadcasting monthly meetings. And as a true old-style press person, are trying to figure out how we've devolved to the point where what every business naturally does to serve their customers, we have state laws, you're telling us, that state government can adjust to surges in requests for services? Is that what we're hearing here today? What are we hearing then, Bill?
What you're hearing is there are certain things that let's say outside staff people can and cannot do. Now, whether or not that would help the situation.
Based on statute, Bill?
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I'll try to post this at informtv.com, especially for your Douglas County citizens, and listen again to Inform TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota. Thank you.